Hi, there's a lot of so-called information on social media, but how do you know which to believe? One way is to use the 5 rules used by back office intelligence officers to estimate which informers to pay more attention to. The first rule is the informer has to be a true domain expert about what he or she reports. Second, he or she must be close to the action. Third, the informer must have been highly reliable in the past and highly accurate. 4, the source, even if an expert on the right spot and accurate in the past, has to have high confidence in this information too. 5, even if all other 4 criteria are met, the informer has to be shown as having no ulterior motive in lying in this case, which means that most newspaper reports, internet bumf, and TV talking heads are often useless, but not all. Every now and then, some bit of reporting is worth following up in person sleuthing. Like which? Like Warren Buffett's recent investment in Taiwan Semi Conductor and certain related news. But wait, the first obvious question is Taiwan? Isn't it risky? What if China attacks it? Well, if information coming out of reliable informers is correct, that investment, unlike Warren Buffett's investment in mainland Chinese stocks, seems solid. Now, which informers are these? Here is where the trick of vetting informers can show you that the real story of Taiwan is not exactly what you read in the press. And which informer is this? One whose name can be made public is Ed Lutwak. Last year, Lutwak traveled to Taiwan, met top people, and gave them what seemed like a semi-official warning from the US government. Now, who is Edward Lutwak? Lutwak is an international strategist and political consultant who advises governments and intelligence agencies and fought in the occasional war himself. He also wrote a few books, including How to Do a Coup d'etat, which became a bestseller internationally. He is certainly a domain expert, so criterion number 1 is met. As for criterion number 2, being close to the action. At the end of the Trump administration, former President Trump put Lutwak on the Pentagon Policy Board, which is like the board of directors of all the US military. So he's very connected and well informed too. Criterion number 2, met also. As for good past predictions, Lutwak is considered the Kissinger of the hush-hush world, although I am sure he takes exception to this because Dr. K, like most other so-called realists, has made a series of bad predictions, unlike Lutwak, whose record is very good. So, criterion number 3, also met. What of criteria number 4 and 5? Has confidence in his prediction and has been judged reliable. Check these two also. Lutwak is very confident in his prediction of no invasion of Taiwan due to China's reliance on food from abroad, which will be blockaded in the case of war. As for reliable, let's not forget, the US Defense Department apparently chose him to deliver a tough message to Taiwan. And what was that message? It was this, and it was delivered in public. Your country, Lutwak said, has 20 million people. So you can easily form a 2 million people militia, teach them how to shoot accurately, like the Israelis and the Finns and Ukrainians do, then give them infantry training and guns and teach them urban warfare. Then, if and when the Chinese land on the beach someplace in Taiwan, it will be over before it starts because your militia will outnumber the PLA army. But what do you do instead? Instead, you Taiwanese buy fancy planes, which makes US weapon suppliers happy, so thank you. But that's not what would make you win a fight with Xi Jinping soldiers. Rather, you should train your own soldiers in old-style infantry shooting. But instead, your generals just march them up and down the parade grounds. Then the soldiers go home and play video games. However, it is not just the soldiers' problem. In fact, not a few of them want to learn how to shoot. But it's your generals who do not teach them how to shoot and don't want to. As Lutwak pointed out, Taiwanese generals are mainly old guard who who served China's interest, some for ideology, others for bribes, or for business opportunities for the families in the mainland. In fact, in 2015, several retired Taiwanese generals flew to Beijing where they attended World War II parade for the PLA. There were calls in Taiwan to strip them of their pensions, but nothing came of it. The Taiwanese army, in other words, seems mostly for show. I said mostly. So Taiwan's relies mostly on the US to defend it. But, as Luttwak scolded his listeners, don't think that because you make fancy computer chips that America needs, it will defend you forever. America will not send its young to die for your microchips, while your young are playing at home video games. Show a will to fight for your country with gun in hand, or you won't have a country. But I hear you, listeners, saying, so what if Luttwak said it? It's just one strategist speaking in public. Think again. This was coming from a former member of the Pentagon Policy Board, so it's as close as possible to an official warning, while still being deniable. Did it move the Taiwanese? No, it didn't. Instead, they just bought some more fancy US jets, no infantry maneuvers, no sniper training, no urban warfare exercises, no commando training, nothing. Or maybe the Taiwanese thought this warning would pass, just like others before it did. The thing was, Luttwak's warning was not the first one. After the previous warning by the US, Taiwan nominated General Shen Yiming as chief of Taiwan's military, and he fired all generals and tried to modernize their army. Apparently, he was making progress, too much progress, because in January 2020, he was killed in a helicopter crash. Was it an inside job by China? Who knows? But it's curious to note that nearly 2 years later, in December 2021, the chief of the Indian army, General Bipin Rawat, who was trying to modernize India's army as it was fighting China in Tibet, he was also killed in a helicopter crash. Well then, one helicopter crash can be misfortune, but two? China apparently was learning from Russia, where falling helicopters seemed to be the accident of choice. Why, General Alexander Lebed, the Russian hero of Chechnya, who became too popular for Putin's taste, met a similar fate in a Russian helicopter crash. Whether these helicopter crashes scared the current Taiwanese top generals into staying on the parade grounds is unknown. But it is a fact that Luttwak had to deliver his extra warning. Now, what does all this have to do with Buffett's investment in Taiwan Semi Conductor stock? Just this. Since Taiwanese decided they'd rather play video games at home than fight for the country gun in hand, the US seemingly decided to force TSMC, the company, to move its newest plan to the US and leave Taiwan to the Taiwanese if they fight for it, but minus TSMC factories. Now, if you talk to the Taiwanese, you would hear them complain bitterly that the US is trying to steal TSMC factory by factory. But if the US really does, it's the Taiwanese own fault. TSMC's microchip plants are too valuable to live in a country whose citizens do not want to defend it. So for the third time, what does all this thing have to you? What does it matter to you as an investor? It matters because the TSMC Corporation, whose stock has plunged due to the perceived risk of Chinese invasion of Taiwan, is now seemingly being moved to the US. More and more of its plants for the latest super-duper chips are being built in Arizona and Texas, not Taiwan. But what did the Chinese do invade Taiwan? Sure, it's possible, but if you talk to real military experts on the quiet, they'll tell you it's unlikely for at least two reasons. First, as Luttwak said, the resulting food embargo would lead to mass starvation in China in a few months. But second, the current Chinese soldiers aren't yet a proper army. Not only they are single sons of one-child families who Xi Jinping would hate to see killed, or rather the mothers would, but officers are sons of CCP top bureaucrats who serve just to enhance their future civilian careers, not because they really want to fight. Xi Jinping knows all this, so he concocted a border war with India where his soldiers fight hand-to-hand with Indian soldiers as advanced training. All in all, Taiwan Semi Conductor, the symbol is TSM, is probably safer than most people think. And as I said in the previous clip, the stock's quality and value indicators, which I use, come highest on my list. Warren Buffett apparently thinks so too, since he just bought a big slug of the stock. Is he right? Well, do your own due diligence, find some informers of your own, maybe former Taiwanese who are now here, who can tell you what they hear from their families back home. Remember, locals always know more than the internet, but information rarely gets reported. Go ahead, start your own sleuthing. That's all for today. Please let me know what you think of the above. Give it a like and subscribe. Then forward to your friends who they subscribe to, and go buy my book, The SLeuth Investor, and give it a review on Amazon, which I hope will be a good one. I'll see you next time, and meantime, thank you very much for watching.